Hey, welcome back, everybody, and thanks for being here. I appreciate it. So, I put out a video a few weeks back about this Type 4 motor refresh that I was working on. And the video got some good comments saying you all wanted to see some more. So, I figured we'd do a little update on that and make a little more progress. We're going to start cleaning up the heads and applying some of the other techniques we talked about in the tips and tricks video that I put out. And eventually what we want to do, turn this short block into a long block. So we're a step closer to getting it put back in the 76 Westie. Let me bring you in a little bit closer and show you what we're doing. So here are the two heads that came off of this motor when I took it apart. As you can notice, this one is quite a bit cleaner. I've started cleaning it up, but I wanted to do a side-by-side and show you what it looked like before. This is what you're going to see on a used head when you take it off. That combustion chamber with a lot of carbon buildup. They're also showing down here signs of a leaky cylinder. It wasn't sealing here whether the nuts on the head were loose or whether we were just getting an imperfection. So anyway, this is this blow-by coming out the bottom of your cylinder. Blow-by sometimes has a sharper pattern. This could also just be leaking. Even if it was just leaking, you're leaking compression out there too. So, all in all, these heads need some attention. Like I said, I've started cleaning on this one. When you're cleaning, getting this stuff out of here, what I was using some of the time was this wire brush on a drill. It's not super aggressive, which is a good thing. You don't want it to necessarily be super aggressive. You don't want to cause any imperfections in the combustion chamber. You're going to be real tempted to get out a screwdriver and start scraping at stuff. But talk about a way to make imperfections. Talk about a way to make hot spots that might result in improper detonation in that cylinder. So, I'm going in pretty mild with this inside the combustion chamber, cleaning up the carbon, and then blowing it out. And we get to something like this. And it looks better. You can see the ridge from the original sealing ring that was there. We are going to come back in, like I mentioned in the last video, and lap the cylinders into the heads and clean that up. I'm also going to pull the valves out and we'll lap them into their seats. And then I think this head's probably going to get dunked in the ultrasonic and try to get it as clean as possible. But I want to get a lot of this other stuff off first. So there's 1 and 2 halfway cleaned up. Let's continue working on that. We'll stick with the 1 and 2 side of the motor. So what we're going to need for this next step here is, this is one style of a spring compressor for your valve springs. I am notoriously a guy that enjoys thrifty finds, but I'm not showing this off. It's just funny to me now. I'm looking at the price sticker still on there. Look for these at swap meets. If you're into, if you're into maybe starting to mess around with motors, look at your swap meet. $5, guys. I found this spring compressor, and it's adjustable. You can see there's 3 slots over here. Like I said in the previous video, I've used it on Type 4 heads, Type 1 single and dual port, like 1500, 1600 heads. I've also used it on a 36 head, although it's not really made for it. But you can make it work. So, this is one style of spring compressor. That's something that's going to be handy, necessary in what we're doing right now. Also a good thing to have around, little magnet on a stick. We're going to be pulling the keepers off of here. When we compress this spring cap, there's 2 little keepers that go in the ridges on the valves. Hopefully this will be a visual aid to make it a little more easy to understand if you've never done this before. This is a valve that's out of a motor right now. But we have these 1, 2, 3 grooves in the top of the valve. And when we compress the spring cap, there's 2-piece keepers down in there. That once you compress that cap, that magnet will reach in and pull them apart. Pull them out one at a time. And then that cap and spring will lift off and the valve will be loose to drop out. This process we're doing so that we can lap the valves into the seats and clean up the valves and hope to get the best sealing combustion chamber we possibly can. And something I didn't mention because I'm notoriously bad about it, messing with these old pistons and cylinders and heads, it's really dirty work. So go get yourself some gloves or some dish soap for when you're done. Okay, so what we want to do first, get the head set on here. To explain this a little better, maybe I could. These blocks right here sit underneath the valves, the face of them there. And that holds them in place when you go to compress the spring so they don't go against you. So you go ahead and set the head on there. Get everything lined up and ready. These Type 4 heads, they fit on there, but it's still, I'm pretty sure this is made for like a Type 1. It's still going to work. But, man, old glued on cork gasket. Not necessary that it come off now, but I just noticed it. Anyway, let me bring you in a little bit closer and I'll actually show you the process on compressing these springs. Another tip and something I did off camera, and I apologize for that. Sometimes running the camera isn't the first thing in mind. You might want to keep a rubber mallet or a dead blow hammer or something close by. Depending on the condition of your used heads, you might need to give a little whack on top of this valve to get stuff to break loose, depending on how long they've been sitting and whatnot. I put this spring compressor down on here, and it didn't want to budge for anything. So, gave it a little whack of the hammer, and then it started moving. And we're back. Keen-eyed observers might notice this is facing the opposite way it was in that previous little segment. When I was pushing it down, stuff wasn't lining up right, and then I also realized to get in here and get these keepers out, I can't have that there. Who knows why it was turned around, if it was from 36 horsepower experiment I keep mentioning, or who knows, doesn't matter. Anyway, having access to this side is going to be important. So let me show you, out of frame a little bit, but you're grabbing this handle up here and shoving down, compressing that spring. Then you want to reach in. There's a keeper. That's one. And there's number two. Those are the halves of the keeper. Then slowly let that spring off, guys. It's under some pressure to keep those valves shut. So, two keeper halves right there. Keep track of this stuff. Don't want to lose it. Anyway, you don't want to lose it. You don't want to have to replace it. It's all still here. Move the compressor off of that spring cap. This is your spring cap. Those keepers go down right inside there on that smooth surface, but when they go into that groove of the valve, that's what holds it all together. And then the spring. And when it comes to stock springs, I don't think there's a top or a bottom. You don't have to worry about that. But anyway, let's move on down the line. Okay, all our spring valve hardware is off now, and like I said, keep that stuff in order, guys. I can't stress that enough. The valves are all going to be loose now. We can take the head off the stand, get those valves out. Now your valve stems back here are going to have some buildup on them, more than likely, like everything does on this head. So when you're taking them out, be gentle, clean that stuff up. You don't want to drag it through your valve guides. If your valve guides are still good, there's no reason to go damaging them. This is where we're going to find out if our valve guides are good or not. You know, if you get play on that valve inside there, then you might have to look into doing valve guides. Okay, we got everything bagged up. One exhaust, one intake, two exhaust. And we got the valves pulled out. And as you can see, there's definitely some buildup on them that we're going to need to clean. Clean that, and then we're going to concern ourselves with the seats and the head. Now, this head is sitting exactly like it would be right now if it was on the motor and you were looking in the engine compartment. Cylinder number 1, cylinder number 2. We're going to keep these valves there. Even though we're going to clean them, we'll make sure not, you know, wipe away our marks on them. But let's get these cleaned up. Maybe do a little more cleaning in the combustion chamber. And then we're going to lap those valves into the head. Got the valves cleaned up. They're looking quite a bit better now. And I've got them marked. Like I mentioned, we don't want to get them mixed up. One exhaust, one intake, two exhaust. The next step is to lap those valves into the heads to lap the valves against the seats. And I mentioned in the previous video a trick I'd seen where you put your lapping compound in, drop it in, and then hook up your drill at the back and allow your drill to do the process. Lapping compound, and the way it was done originally, the tool that comes with it is a little handle with a suction cup on each end, different size suction cup for different size valve. And you sit there and, you know, rub it like you're starting a fire with sticks. The suction cups aren't always great. It's kind of a frustrating process at times, especially if you're an impatient person. Anyway, since I'd seen that trick, I have looked into it and I've seen other people doing it. When I first mentioned it, where I'd seen it, the individual had put fuel line on the valve stem once it was through and ran that on the drill. I've seen other people just hook directly up to their valve stem with the drill. Being the impatient person I am, I think I'm going to do it that way. So, let's start lapping some valves. Okay, so valve grinding compound. That's what we're using. We're going to start with this number 1 exhaust here. Just put a little compound on the sealing surface. Make sure your compound isn't dried up in the end of the tube so you can get it out. Will. Alright, sorry about that. Valve grinding compound is doing what it's supposed to now. Anyway, a lot of it squirted out when I got it. So I transferred it off of my gloves onto here. As you can see, got a plenty, more than enough on there. Drop it in. And there it is, number 1 exhaust. Come around here. There it is. So, you're actually seeing me try this for the first time here. It's not something I've practiced. There we go. We're on there. I'm going to go ahead and put my hand on the outside, but it's definitely spinning. So that's a good start. You can pull a little pressure back on the drill. Obviously, pull too hard, it'll come off. I'm not clamping super tight on that valve end. Not that I'm super worried, but you don't want to damage anything. So pushing pressure with these fingers isn't a bad thing. Change direction. Okay. That's a little bit of work, guys. It's not a ton. And I'm not saying we're done yet. I'm just saying work it a little bit, then inspect your work. You pull it out. Clean up that valve. What you're looking for is a nice consistent surface all the way around that valve. If you see any imperfections, you need to do it again and again and again. The objective is, this is your sealing surface. When that valve's closed, you want it sealed. So, imperfections, not okay. I'm going to get some cleaner, clean this up so we can see it a little bit better. Let me get you in here and show you what we're working on. This angled surface here is our sealing surface, okay? So you're looking for a consistent coloring around that. Kind of a, I don't know, it's a matte gray color is the consistency you're going to get when it's all cleaned up. And you're going to see the same thing up in here. Let me get a screwdriver so my finger isn't. This angled surface right here is your sealing surface. So you're going to want to look all around it. Again, make sure you don't have any imperfections, any spots where you can see that it could leak out compression or anything for that matter. Get that good and consistent, and then you're able to move on to the next one. We're going to do that to all 4 valves in this head and all 4 in the other head over there. But today we're working on number 1 and 2. So one thing I failed to mention, and I want to go ahead and make note of, especially, not just only, but especially if you've cleaned your valves, when you put them in here and you're using this drill method, that is a high RPM method. Oil your valve stem. It's going through, this right here is you can't even see, sorry. There's valve guides in there, guys. This tube, you see it right there, that tube? That's your valve guide. You need to lubricate the valve stem so that when it's spinning in there at high RPM for this lapping compound, you're not causing that guide to get gummed up or anything. A clean valve's a great idea. A clean guide's a great idea, but definitely put some oil in there so when you're spinning at high RPM, you aren't potentially damaging your valve guide, because it will fail before the valve. I believe the valve guides are brass. This is steel. That kind of heat friction is definitely going to create a gummy situation. So clean, add oil before you lap. Just want to make note of that. Also something to pay attention to. I just remarked my valve. When I had my finger resting on it while I was lapping it with the drill, it definitely pulled that paint marker off there. So you don't want to get mixed up, guys. Before you move on to the next one, remark it if your paint came off. Number 1 exhaust is done. Let's move on. Here's an example. That's going to be hard to see, guys, but maybe right there. After that first run through, I'm still seeing imperfections in this seat. So this is definitely one we're going to justify doing another round on. I like to do 2 rounds on every valve at a minimum. You do your initial valve grind, clean it up, look for imperfections, and then go ahead and go back for any of those micro imperfections you might not see. If you don't see any imperfections, still do a second round. That's my preference. This one deserves a second round because of these imperfections that I'm seeing, so it might end up getting a third round if I can get rid of this. Okay, that is vastly improved on that second run through. But like I said, I always like to do 2. So this one is going to get a third one. We cleaned it up. We're going to put fresh compound on, give it one more run, and then we'll have all of these valves done, move on to the next step. That looks great. Let's call this one good and move on to the next step. Okay, now we're moving on to something I've mentioned a couple times, and I know some people aren't familiar with this technique, but we just lapped the valves into their seats. We're now going to lap the cylinder into the head. This head, when we took it apart, had a factory Volkswagen gasket here that they recommend during their service bulletin, even back in the day. Get rid of those. Well, we are now sealing a piston to a surface it's never been sealed before, and this is used. All the more reason to use some of the same compound where it seats into the combustion chamber there of the head. A little bit of compound. And there's no fancy drill tool for this, but you make sure you get number one going in number one. Get it in there. And you just lap it in. Little downward pressure, lots of rotation. This is basically where the cylinder is going to sit, the flat side to the inside. You can kind of concentrate your efforts there, but full rotation, what you're trying to do is just consistent sealing surface all the way around. But quick back and forth motion, full rotations, whatever you can do, and then you're going for the same thing when you clean it up. You're looking for a consistent surface that you can tell has had that compound sanded into it. Clean it up. This isn't our final clean either. This is far from it, actually. So for anybody wondering about my dirty paper towel I kept using on those valves, this isn't final clean. But you do want to get it clean enough where you can inspect the surface, look for imperfections, look for any debris that you might need to get a pick and scrape out. If you've had a leaky cylinder, there's been some blow by, get that junk out of there. That compound is not going to remove that hefty stuff. Like I said, I took a wire brush on a drill to this earlier to clean out a bunch of the carbon in preparation for this process. But we're getting the surface I'm looking for here. It's getting there. It's not there yet. This could take a couple of times. Again, in this particular scenario, used heads, used cylinders. This is going to take a little more work. It's not as easy as putting together a fresh motor. It's just cheaper. Not if you count your labor sometimes. Anyway, let's keep working on this. Get this sealing surface looking great. I'm going to get my little pick and clean up some of these corners. Make it as nice as we can. And hope for the best on this sealing up and being a great motor. Okay, I wanted to bring you all in close and show you this. You can see this dark gray ring that I've created around the combustion chamber. That's what we're looking for, guys. That's showing that this edge of the cylinder with that rubbing compound on it has been spinning in there. You want to look in here for inconsistencies. If you see any spots where it's not that same color, that's a sign that that's a spot you're going to have some blow through at. So that's what we're looking for. Not to confuse it, you can't barely see this, but with the ridge created by that original seal that was in there, this is a much darker contrast here. The difference to me is visible. I hope it is to you also. But that is what we're looking for, a consistent sealing surface there. That's looking great. I'll tell you another trick too you can do. You can also do it with the valves. If this is something you're new to and you're giving it a shot, I commend you. That's great. That's how you get started. Learning to be your own mechanic. It's awesome. With the valves, with the cylinders, if you need to, you can actually color it in with a Sharpie around your surface where you're going to be lapping it. If you don't think you can tell whether it's right or not, put a little Sharpie on there. There's other stuff besides Sharpie. There's stuff that's actually made for it. But it's kind of the same thing if you're used to doing body work. It's like a guide code. You can put that on there, and I'll tell you what, this lapping compound will for sure take off that Sharpie, and then you'll know if there's any spots where there's Sharpie left, you've likely got a low spot. So for demonstration purposes, there's a little bit of compound on there, lapping compound. Okay, doesn't take a lot. Got my Sharpie inside there, and we're going to give it the treatment again. Okay. Let me give it a little spray. Help get that compound off there. Okay, what you're looking at here is that surface that was Sharpied. And for an example, here's where my Sharpie slid out a little bit. It's kind of not wanting to focus. You can see a line right there though. This Sharpie was kind of faint, and I'd already done the surface, so it took all of it out, so you don't really see any remnants. But what I'm telling you, that had Sharpie all over it. That compound took it out. So if you're new at this and you're not sure, don't feel confident, whatever it might be, put something on that surface like a Sharpie and then do your lapping and see if you have any spots left, and that's going to tell you where you have a low spot. Well, we got the cylinders lapped into the head. We got the valves lapped into their seats. Cylinder number 1 and 2 is done. 3 and 4 still needs to happen, but as I'm showing you all this, we're working on one side of the motor. Anyway, the head is its prep work is done. It's time to clean it now. It doesn't really fit in my ultrasonic, but I'm not going to let that stop me. We're going to find a way. Anyway, I'm not going to run that while I'm doing the video, so that'll happen once I shut down filming tonight. But I wanted to show you something on the engine assembly. Something, little trick I learned here recently from a friend of mine that is an engine builder. He said something you need to check, because this is a used motor, is make sure that, you know, the case hasn't been surfaced. Make sure your cylinders, when they're set down in the case, are the same height, or when you go to torque your head down, you're going to get gap, you're going to get blow by. And this was new to me. Makes perfect sense hearing it, but it's one of those things that early teachers left out for me on these motor refreshes. So anyway, he told me a great little trick for how to do this. I'm going to show it to you. This is it, guys. As weird as it might look, we have some 1/2-inch PVC cut to fit these studs. And the PVC is used so that you can set it up on the rim. If you've ever tightened down on the fins before, you know that you're going to snap those things. So you slide the base of this over, set it on the rim of the cylinder, and these are not torqued to spec, but they're tightened down enough with a wrench to push these cylinders down. You could probably get away with doing diagonals on each cylinder, but I had enough PVC, have them sitting around. I cut enough to do all the studs. Inevitably I'm going to lose some, but at least we're starting out at a full set. Now, you get these, like I said, snug down. They don't have to be done to torque spec. What you're trying to do is sink the cylinder into the case and get it to seat. And then I'm using a framing square, but you lay it across the top of the cylinders, and you're looking to make sure, it's hard to see on camera, I can see it with my eye. You can also feel for rocking, but you want it to be sitting on all 4 surfaces all the way across. And that way you know your case is going to seal up and your head is going to seal to your cylinders, as long as you have a good sturdy square right here. All surfaces are the same height. I thought that was a pretty handy trick. Definitely have added it to my repertoire. Repertoire? That's French. Look at this guy. What's he doing in here? I don't like those. I got to go to minor emergency when they dance with me and get a shot in the butt, and then they got to keep an eye on me and make sure that I don't, let my throat close up. I'll take care of him off screen. Anyway, what was I saying? Some French word? Repertoire for putting these motors back together. Summer's not over yet, but it is for this guy. Well, talk about keeping it real. Um, I don't know how I missed that on the initial once over on these pistons, but that's a pretty serious crack. Not a crack that I am willing to play around with. Thinking about this piston jamming in and out at 3,000 RPMs. Yes, there's a lot of meat back here, but this crack right here could probably find its way through that, and that is not, a dare that I'm gonna take on. Consider me disappointed. It's not the end of this build, though. The motor that came out of this bus had some head issues, but there's a good chance that its pistons and cylinders are maybe in good shape. That motor had been rebuilt before. I think it was probably just a top end. It had AMC heads, and the pistons and cylinders are not Volkswagen. I forget what make they are. But I'm kind of hoping that maybe they're low mileage. I keep looking at them. I pulled them out. I'm kind of hoping they're low mileage pistons and cylinders. It's frustrating, but you know what? Hey, this is part of doing an engine refresh, not an engine rebuild. Engine rebuilds come with their own potential disappointments and stuff. There's no doubt. But when you're reusing old parts, you're kind of lining yourself up for disappointment sometimes. Anyway, this piston and cylinder set is 75% good and 25%, like I said, a dare I'm not going to take. So, time now to clean up another set of pistons and cylinders. I think I'm going to start with doing thorough checking on the pistons this time. Get the rings off. Maybe I'll pull that head out of the ultrasonic and just put all 4 pistons in there. Get them cleaned really good so we can get an idea if we have good pistons. The cylinders, I'm sure they're going to be fine. They'll need to be honed. Everything will need to be cleaned up. I want to measure, because they're different makes, piston height, cylinder depth, all these things. Make sure they're comparable. When I was doing it with the original piston and cylinder set that came off this motor, with the original heads that were on this motor, I wasn't worried about compression ratios because it was all going back together, minus that little shim in there. But all that was going to do is give me that fraction of a better compression ratio. These late FI motors, from what I'm told, were detuned kind of. That's not the right word. They had a lower compression ratio than really necessary. They had a lot of combustion going on in the cylinder versus up in the combustion chamber. All that to say, this initial plan was going to go just fine, removing the sealing shim that was on top of the cylinder between it and the head. I'm going to check this other set of piston cylinders. I want to use the heads that came off this motor. Yeah. Disappointing. But like I said, that's kind of part of it. That's part of the process here. This is real, guys. I'm not hiding a thing from you. I literally just noticed this Mondo crack. I was preparing, getting everything set up to start putting the 1 and 2 side on this motor on camera. And now we're not. Not today. Like I said, I'm going to pull these pistons out of these cylinders, get the pins out of them, get the rings off of them, drop them in that ultrasonic cleaner, set it to hot, set it to vibrate, let it go, and see if we can clean them up. Then we'll take a look at them. Fingers crossed we find a good set this time. And then we'll start building it. We'll get back to where we were. I guess I'm going to have to possibly, for thoroughness, run those cylinders into the head. Make sure, I doubt it's going to be an issue. Sorry, I'm rambling here. This is all happening to me in the moment, and my head is going crazy with what I need to do. But I'm going to get back on track. This is just a little setback. So, yeah. All right, guys, it's been a couple hours since I found my cracked piston, and I've kind of come to terms with everything here. These other set of pistons and cylinders, I got the pistons. They have now been through the ultrasonic in 2 half-hour cycles. Everything's looking okay. I still want to get a wire wheel to them, clean them up, but I think we're going to be back on track. I'm going to go ahead and end the video here because it's getting kind of long, and some of you, it's hard to keep your attention. Anyway, I appreciate y'all being here. Listen, we got some new subscribers. That's awesome. Thank you all. Just takes a minute to go down there and hit subscribe. Hit like while you're down there. Helps me out a lot. Anyway, like, subscribe, comment, all those things, man. It really helps my videos out. I appreciate you guys being here, though. Coming back, checking me out, seeing what's going on. The Type 4 motor refresh build is happening. Got a little derailed today, but it's not going to stop us. So, like I said, in the process, got some cleaning up to do for a second time. But I think everything's going to be good. A little more cleanup, a little bit of measuring. We'll be right back on track. I got a good feeling about it. Anyway, like, subscribe, comment. Tell me what you're thinking. I don't know what your guys' thoughts are on just replacing one piston. I was thinking about it, and then I thought, no, let's just use a whole other set. But it's going to happen, man. We're going to get this motor together. It's just going to be not as soon as I'd hoped. The motor's still sitting there. The parts are here. We'll get on it, guys. Thanks for being here, and until next time.